This is Fred Beck from Fred Exciting. Today I'm very lucky to joined by Ken Rideout. So thank you very much for coming on, Ken. It's good to see you, mate.
Nice to see you, Fred. Thanks for having me.
So usually, obviously, I've got a bit of a bad lighting right now, so I'm in Norfolk right now. I'm not in London where I usually am. And I saw an interview with you, I think it was on Pep Talk from about a year ago, and you were saying you lived in London for 2 years. Whereabouts did you live?
I lived in the crap part, Kensington.
Oh, okay. What in
I'm kidding. It was like the American ghetto, Kensington, South Kensington.
Oh, okay. There's a number of boxing gyms in Kensington where you must have been. I don't know if they're open at the time you were living there. Yeah, so what I want to start with, I want to talk about the triathlons because most people watching this will know you from the triathlons and then your boxing podcast with Teddy Atlas. We'll start with triathlons. How did you originally get into them? Because that's not a sport that most people would think about picking up.
No, I was running a lot and I started to have some knee issues. So I bought a bike, started riding my bike with people that, thought that they were strong cyclists. And I thought either these guys are delusional about their strength as a cyclist, or maybe I'm pretty good at this. So then I just entered a triathlon without knowing anything of what I was doing. I could barely swim and I finished maybe in like the top 10. And then I realized if I try, I bet I can beat a lot of these nerds. And I just started training. And again, I didn't know how to swim. I'd go to the pool and just ask people to look at my stroke and tell me what I'm doing wrong. And I would just pick up little tidbits here and there. But it's like anything in life. If you're waiting for someone to explain to you how to do things, you'll be waiting a long time. You've just got to jump in and figure it out. And that's what I did. And then as I started progressing and getting better, I did the Hawaii Ironman 3 times, World Championships. And then I recently just started running a lot more, and I won a few marathons, a few half marathons. And yeah, I always tell people, in running, when you get tired, unlike fighting, no one's going to punch your face or choke you unconscious. It's easy to just suffer more than the next guy if that's all it takes to win.
And which do you prefer the most in the triathlons, the running, swimming, or cycling?
I hate them all equally. It never gets easier. You just get faster. It's still work. It's always work. People want to discount it and find reasons why you might have success in something. Oh, they want to find a reason why you did it and they didn't, like, yo, you're naturally good at running. No, I'm a shit runner. I was never really good. I just tried really hard and progressed. And you can see my natural progression. I mean, I took an hour off my marathon time from the first time I ran a marathon. But yeah, so to answer your question, like, I guess if I had to enjoy one, I'd say I'd probably enjoy cycling a little more. It's not as hard. I like to catch up with friends on the bike and chit chat, especially when I was living in California in Malibu. We'd ride through the mountains. And I like swimming too. Probably I like running the least, but that just happens to be what I'm relatively speaking the best at.
Yeah, I've got your time here for the Boston Marathon. You're running in 2 hours and 35 minutes, and that's your fastest time, isn't it?
No, fastest time I ran in Sacramento in 2009, December of 19. I ran 2:28, and then I ran 2:30 twice. I came in second in the Huntington Beach Marathon in California, Huntington Beach, California, and then recently I won the Myrtle Beach Marathon on May 1st, the day before I turned 50, and I won that in 2:30.
Blimey, I didn't expect that. That's pretty fast. So you don't think that age matters as much as people really think then?
I guess at some point it does. I've run faster every year since I've been in my 30s, so it's hard to say. It's hard for me to acknowledge that age is big detractor, but I guess I'm starting to feel old now. I haven't run faster this year, but I have only run a few races.
Yeah, I know. I think especially now in this time, people are starting to realize that age isn't really getting the world as people used to think. All right, so moving on to what I really want to talk about is a podcast you got with Teddy. How did you originally meet Teddy? Because he's very well known in the boxing industry.
Yeah, he, a friend of mine who's the producer of the show, Rob Moore, was doing some PR for fighters, and he started out in traditional PR career path in New York City. He worked at a big PR agency, and then he moved out to California to work on his own, set up his own PR practice, and he was representing some fighters, and one of the fighters, Mike Lee, introduced him. Mike's dad, John Lee, introduced Rob to Teddy to help Teddy with some of his PR and career management stuff. And through that, they decided to launch a podcast. And my connection to Teddy was through my friend Rob, who I had originally introduced to Mike Lee. And he said, would you be interested in doing this with Teddy? Of course, I was like, yes. I mean, I love boxing. I love the UFC. And that's how I met him. We did a few episodes trial, and they worked out. And you can see that they've gotten progressively better as we've worked together.
And I see you all on Twitter. I listen to it every week. When I do the pot wash in the pub, I always listen to it. Kind of gets the hours through.
Yeah.
So how much preparation or revision did you do for the podcast each week? Because I always see Teddy's always got a lot of notes on his desk.
Yeah. I don't do as much as Teddy, but no one's looking for me to break down the fights and give the in-depth analysis that Teddy gives, right? So I watch the fights. I prepare for a few hours before the show and just go over my notes and see what's what. Because, God forbid you make a mistake and misspeak about something in the show. And it's like, it's always interesting to me, the clowns that take the time to point out other men's flaws. You have to ask yourself a question. What kind of person are you? Are you the kind of person that recognizes a mistake and says, hey, buddy, just FYI, that guy was fighting for a title that, heads up, cool, versus the dick who's like, oh, look at you made a mistake. It's like the classic example of Teddy Roosevelt's poem, The Man in the Arena. Are you the guy in the arena trying to get shit done and do things? Or are you the idiot on the outside pointing at, looking at how the guy in the arena might fail? Guess what? If you know you would succeed, would you even get in there and fight someone or do something that you knew you couldn't lose? People make mistakes. Are you the person who's building them up and encouraging them to try again? Hey, heads up, man. Keep doing what you're doing, but that's a mistake. Thank you. Or are you the idiot that's like, you suck? Guess what? The guy who's pointing out you suck, he sucks. Get something going in your life, man. Lift some people up. Stop being a jerk. No one likes you. No one likes that guy. People like people that support and encourage and uplift and spread love, not hate. Idiots. Anyway, I digress.
That poem was used a lot in the Conor Dustin Poirier trilogy in the build up to that. Yeah, I know. I always see in the comments. I always look at the comments of quite a lot of videos. I always see that they put the timestamps and they'll tweet about it. Well, that's the world of Twitter, Ken, for you. And what I really want to know, Teddy Atlas, he's got some really good analogies he always used when he talks about the fights. Go on here. He says, the taller fighter is like the skyscraper, and the shorter fighter wants to go in there and start smashing windows. Where does he get all these analogies from? How does he make them all up? Because he's got thousands of these.
Your guess is as good as mine. He's like an encyclopedia of boxing analogies and expressions and stories. I mean, he spent his life in gyms with old timers and boxers. And, when you spend that much time in a setting, you pick up a lot of information and knowledge. And I don't know. He's got a lot of them, and I enjoy every single one of them.
Yeah, I do as well. It's really good. And you just mentioned there, you on your podcast, I know you guys talk about the UFC quite a lot, just as much as talk about boxing. And whereas a lot of other boxing podcasts, they don't dare talk about the UFC. But I quite like how you guys talk about both combat sports. Which sport do you like to talk about the most? Which do you kind of find the most interesting, UFC or boxing?
I don't really have a preference, to be honest. I like entertaining fights. I like entertaining combat sports. So, when they have a big fight, the big fights in boxing just don't happen as often. There's a big UFC pay-per-view event that gets me excited every month. There might be 2 or 3 pay-per-view boxing matches a month where people are like, let's get together and watch the fights, versus A versus B. B has about a 10-1 chance of winning, A side, B side in boxing. There's just a lot of mismatches. It's a very complex ecosystem with the different promoters, etc. So I don't really, all things equal, big boxing match versus big UFC. I mean, if you ask me which event I would go to, it depends who was fighting. Like Fury versus AJ, there's not many UFC fights that would be bigger than that for me. Maybe like Francis versus John Jones, Anything my boy Dustin Poirier is doing, only because he's my friend and I love watching him. But, big boxing, it's hard to beat. When you get a big mega boxing match, it's hard to beat because the UFC is just so regular with it. It's like there's big fights every month there. But they have an advantage. They're the only show in town. You either take what they're offering or you're not fighting, as we've seen with Francis winning the heavyweight title. And 3 months later, they have an interim title fight because he didn't do what they asked him to do. So, the UFC has a distinct and unique advantage over boxing in that regard.
Yeah, I completely understand as well. Boxing needs a matchmaker like Sean Shelby. He's one of the best in the business. And it's also a lot easier to match the fighters up in the UFC because they're under one promotion. Whereas in boxing, you've got Matchroom, Queensbury, Top Rank, got thousands, well, loads of promotions. I only have one more question. I don't take too much of the time, but you've been able, on the podcast, you've been able to speak to the loads of different fighters. For example, Francis Ngannou, Dustin Poirier, Jorge Masvidal. Who've been some of my most favorite fighters to be able to speak to date?
Man, I appreciate all of those guys. I mean, it's hard to pick one guy that's a favorite. Obviously, Dustin's been on the show the most. We've had Israel Adesanya on twice, Jorge Masvidal twice. We're trying to line something up with a really big pound for pound top fighter, hopefully on Monday. I don't want to give it away, but we're working with his management team. We've had Evander Holyfield, Daniel Cormier, Alex Vosdick, Lomachenko. The list goes on and on. It's hard to pick a favorite, man. They're all so good. I guess if I had to pick one, I'd say Poirier, just because he's my friend.
Yeah, I know, that's awesome to get so many guests. How come you guys have so many UFC fighters on, but not as many boxers?
Ask the boxers. They have an open invitation. Anyone who wants to come on the show, you're welcome. And UFC guys, they like and respect what Teddy has to say. I mean, Israel Adesanya and Dustin Poirier were on the show because they mentioned us/Teddy in their post-fight interview in the ring or at the press conference. So those were no-brainers. And that's how we started having guests. And those guys respond. We asked them to come on, they come on. We've asked some fighters, some boxers to come on, and it's crickets, Oh, well. we can only do what we can do. We're not going to beg people to come on the show. It's not my style, and it's certainly not Teddy's style.
Yeah, I can imagine Teddy won't be. I can't imagine Teddy messaging them every single minute go on the show. All right, Ken, thanks so much for your time today. I know you're very limited with your time, so thank you so much for your time. And where can people find you on social media at?
Instagram, I think my name is Ken Rideout, Ken_Rideout, something like that. Ken Rideout on Twitter and Instagram. You should be able to find me.
Awesome. Thanks so much for your time today, Ken. That's amazing. Thank you.
All right, Fred. Good luck. Keep it up, man.